The slasher film is arguably the most infamous subgenre of horror. When most people think of horror, they first think of figures like Leatherface, Freddy Krueger, Chucky, and Ghostface. But today I'm going to be pitting two of these icons against one another. Jason Voorhees, the hockey mask wearing undead serial killer from Camp Crystal Lake. Michael Myers, the emotionless embodiment of pure evil from Haddonfield. Who is the better slasher? In order to answer this question, I first had to ask myself what factors or traits would make for the perfect slasher. Essentially, if I could build a perfected slasher from scratch, what things would I focus on? And I ultimately came to a list of 5 categories that I would need my perfect slasher to kill it in. And these categories are presence, character design, brutality, personality, and ingenuity. So in today's video, I'll be going through these 5 categories and awarding each one to either Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. And whoever ends up winning more categories will ultimately be the Screen Story certified pick as the better slasher. When it comes to presence, I'm primarily thinking about how intimidating you are, how much terrifying aura you have. For my perfect slasher, from the second they appeared on screen, you know damn well that this figure was not to be trifled with. And both Jason and Michael Myers kill it in this category. They embody fear with their on-screen presence. But for me, the separator in this category is the way in which they're filmed and visually captured. Michael Myers at his peak was consistently filmed with predominantly low angles and had perfect lighting that helped aid with his on-screen presence. Both are physically imposing, large, brooding characters, so with their physical appearance being pretty on par with one another, I do think looking at how they're typically framed in their shots and taking the filmmaking into account has to be the determining factor here. And you can certainly argue about which of these franchises has more quote-unquote good movies, but you certainly can't argue that the filmmaking and editing within the Friday franchise ever reaches the heights of the first Halloween film, or even Halloween 2. The Halloween directors understood how to set and position Myers to look as imposing as possible. Point for Michael Myers. Now, character design goes hand in hand with presence to a certain extent, but it's more predicated solely on how you look. Intimidation and aura have a non-physical component to them that goes beyond character design, and is impacted by how you carry yourself and how you're filmed. And both Jason and Michael have a somewhat similar getup. They both wear jumpsuits and a mask. It's rather simple, but at their apex, they both look great for a slasher. However, they both also have some pretty poor outings in terms of character design. Potato Sack Jason from Friday Part 2 is abysmal, and the mask in Halloween 4 is fucking atrocious. But with Jason, I would say that post-Friday Part 3, where he first dons the iconic hockey mask, he's more or less consistent in terms of character design, where he's relatively just good old scary hockey mask Jason going forward. And even when he gets an upgrade to Uber Jason in Jason X, his look is still pretty effective. Whereas with Michael Myers, the mask is so hit or miss from Halloween film to Halloween film. You simply can't tell me that the mask in H2O looks good. And given that they honestly have very similar character designs, I'm going to give Jason the nod here for being more consistent. Sure, you could argue that a hockey mask is easier to get right, but it's not Jason's fault that Michael's mask is fucked up in like half of the Halloween movies. Point to Jason Voorhees. Brutality is a category that is an absolute essential for any slasher figure. If you ain't killing people and killing them viciously, then you simply aren't a great slasher in my humble opinion. And yet again, both Michael Myers and Jason have some iconic and grotesque kills under their belt. However, Friday the 13th was quite literally made to be a more brutal version of Halloween, and I do think that for the most part we get more blood and gore consistently throughout the Friday the 13th saga. There's certainly some Halloween films, such as Halloween Kills, where the brutality is definitely at that Friday the 13th level, but Jason is more dependable when it comes to delivering beautiful, brutal death blows. It also helps that Jason is a far more mythical being than Michael in terms of how much damage he can take and survive through, so naturally Jason just tends to see more action, if you will. Point to Jason Voorhees. My fourth category is personality. And this typically could either go one of two ways for a slasher. A, they could be an emotionless mute killer with no human traits, so in essence terrifying due to their lack of personality. Or B, they could really enjoy their killings and make quippy jokes and really mentally torment their victims. And thankfully for my analysis, both Jason and Michael fall into the first archetype. They both don't really say anything and are killing machines with no remorse for their heinous actions. We do have some backstory for both Jason and Michael, and it's honestly pretty similar. Both have a complicated history with the territory they inhabit and seek to kill anyone they come across. Though I will say that I slightly prefer Michael's backstory. Killing his sister in cold blood just because he felt like it, and then being institutionalized for decades is superior to simply drowning to death. I also love the little head tilt movements that Michael hits us with from time to time. It's almost similar to what a dog does when you try to have a conversation with them. It's as if he's a completely different species who lacks the ability to comprehend or sympathize with humanity. So by a very slight margin, I'd give the edge to Michael Myers. They're both emotionless killing machines, but Myers has a little bit more to his character in my opinion. Point for Michael Myers. If you're keeping count, then you know we're currently deadlocked 2-2, which means everything will come down to this last category, ingenuity. And when I say ingenuity, I'm primarily thinking about how clever and creative you are with your slashing. Not only with the kills themselves, but also the way you set up the deadly blow. And to a certain degree, just your overall intelligence. Like, how hard would it be for me to outsmart this character? And while, as I noted previously, Jason typically displays a greater level of brutality when killing teens at Camp Crystal Lake, I do think Michael Myers is a smarter character who sets up his kills in more clever ways at times. The primary kill that comes to mind is from Halloween 1. Where Michael puts the blanket on and sort of pretends to be the dude that he just killed. There's a few moments of cleverness like this from Michael where he sort of takes enjoyment out of tormenting his prey, playing with his food essentially. Not to say that Jason doesn't also enjoy his handiwork, I'm sure that he also loves it, but this sort of psychological aspect is largely absent from Friday the 13th. I also do think that outsmarting Jason is a more easily accomplished task. We see Jason freeze up when Ginny impersonates his mother at the end of Friday Part 2, and we see him freeze yet again when Tommy impersonates his younger self at the end of Friday Part 4. So despite the fact that he's stronger than Michael Myers, I do think Myers is clearly smarter and demonstrates more ingenuity throughout the course of his franchise. So this last determining category goes to Michael Myers. And in my opinion, I do think Myers is the better slasher by a slight margin. Well, if you made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this debate. Who do you think is the better slasher? Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe for more Screen Stories content. I've made a number of horror-themed videos, and a playlist with all of them will be linked in the description. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace.